Exploring your food. Exploring your food is an important way in which we can connect to our own cultures and also learn about new cultures. Because food seems to give us a common ground in which we can better relate to other people. Today we're going to explore more baklava, which many people relate to Greek heritage and culture, but it also has a much deeper history and culture relating to the Middle East. It is a common dish found throughout the Middle East, with origins relating back to the 8th century BC, where it started out as such a basic recipe of layered dough and nuts found by Greek sailors in Mesopotamia, and they brought it back to Greece, where they started developing it more into the dish we know today as they created phyllo dough. And the dish further received changes from throughout the centuries, with the addition of Armenians adding cinnamon and spice to the nut and pastry dish, and later honey being added during the Ottoman Empire starting in the 5th century AD, which continued to develop, and sometime during the Ottoman Empire we discovered the recipe that most of us generally relate to being baklava. So we're going to start making baklava. One of the first steps you need for baklava is your nuts. Today I'm using walnuts. Traditionally baklava is used with either walnuts or almonds, but there's also recipes using pistachios, and even some areas have used sesame seeds. Generally what gets used in baklava in the past would have been most regionally convenient to those making the baklava. So whatever nut was most convenient for them to add to the dish is what was generally added. But today in our global society, it's very easy for us to go to our grocery store and buy whatever type of nut you would like to add. I prefer walnuts because that seems to be the most traditional nut used in baklava around St. Louis, where we have a small but strong Greek community. You're going to want to start off by chopping up 2 cups of nuts in your food processor. You want to make sure you grind the nuts into a rather fine nut green texture. You don't want any large clumps of nuts. This will give you a nice smooth texture when you eat. Okay, once you've got your 2 cups of nuts through the food processor, you're going to want to add a 4th cup of granulated sugar and a tablespoon of cinnamon. You can add more or less cinnamon depending on your personal preference. And then you'll mix the cinnamon and sugar with the nuts, and then you're going to set this aside for a few moments while we prepare the next few parts of the baklava. Next, you're going to need 1 cup of butter, and you're going to want to melt this in the microwave. Butter is considered an American addition to baklava. Traditionally over in Greece, olive oil had been used to layering the phyllo dough. But when immigrants came over to America, butter was much more readily available and cheaper than in Greece, where, as opposed to their homeland of Greece, butter was much more expensive and considered too luxurious to use for such a dish, and olive oil was traditionally used. You're going to want to melt your butter in the microwave. Depending on your microwave, it can take anywhere from a minute to 2. Alright, now that we've got our 1 cup of melted butter and our 2 cups of chopped walnuts mixed with our sugar and cinnamon, our next step is to get our phyllo dough. You can buy phyllo dough generally at any grocery store in the freezer section. And within this package for this recipe, you only need to use half the package, which is 1 roll of phyllo dough. Phyllo dough is very thin strips, thin layers of dough. When you buy it, you're going to get in the freezer section. You're going to want to let it defrost for several hours before using it, and you're not going to want to open it from its package until you're ready to use it, because since it's so thin, it dries out very quickly, and you need to make sure that it stays moist while making your baklava, because the dough is so fragile. If it starts drying out, it will fall apart. And at this time, you're also going to want to preheat your oven to 350, and then you'll get your baking pan, which should be about a 9x13 baking pan. It can be a little bit smaller and sometimes even a little bit bigger. You just want to make sure it will easily fit your filo dough into the pan. Now to start out, we're going to start off, you want one layer of dough, and you're going to, to start off, you're going to want to coat the bottom of your pan with some butter. Alright, then you'll lay in your first layer of filo dough. Then you're going to coat that with, brush that with butter. Make sure that you try and coat this as evenly as possible with your pastry brush. And then you add your next layer of dough, and you'll want to do probably about 5 or 6 layers like this before we add our first nut layer. Once you've laid down about 5 layers of filo dough, alternating between a butter layer, brushing it with butter and dough, then you're going to want to add some of your nut mixture. You're going to sprinkle an even layer onto the dough, probably about a third or so of your mixture.
During the 18th century, a French chef was brought into the Ottoman Empire to the capital of Constantinople. There he created another variation on baklava by creating a dome-type structure for the baklava to be formed into. The layered form that I am creating here is the most traditional form of baklava that had been created prior to then and is found in most places today. Baklava is often used to help celebrate weddings and at many festivals.
Now that we've got our layers done, you're going to want to cut this. You can either cut this how I usually cut this, which is into triangles, or you can cut it into diamond shapes. And the purpose of cutting it is, one, it gives you your serving sizes, but also another part of baklava is that you make a honey syrup that coats the baklava. So we've got our baklava, we've layered it with butter, filo dough, nuts, and we've sliced it and poured any remaining butter over top. Now we're going to want to bake it. We've preheated our oven to 350, and you'll want to bake it in your oven for 35 to 40 minutes until it's golden brown. And while it's baking, you'll want to make up your honey syrup for the baklava. The honey syrup calls for 1 cup of honey and a half cup of granulated sugar, 1 cup of water, a capful of vanilla. And you can also, per your preference, and traditionally a lot of times they add a stick of cinnamon and some cloves while making the honey sauce. I generally do not. Cook this until it comes to a gradual boil, and then you'll want to reduce it and let it cook down a little bit until it forms a nice coating on your spoon.
When your baklava is done, you're going to want to ladle the syrup mixture over the hot baklava. The syrup mixture may have cooled some at this point and thickened some. You'll want to ladle it evenly over the baklava, and then you'll want to let the baklava cool for a few hours before serving this. This allows the syrup mixture to soak up into the baklava. So, with early beginnings in the 8th century BC, with over 2,000 years of development added from other cultures, and even still now, continuing to be added to it, baklava has a rich cultural and historical history that we all share and enjoy. And this should hopefully encourage you to start exploring more of your food.